just answering questions with WAPTech, a set of corrections I've been asked to do about a video. So we'll do that one first because it's much more interesting than someone demanding I listen to yet another COVID idiot. So here we go. I did a video titled Leonid Cobra Goblin Comet Olin Orion Double Barrel Airsoft Gas Toy Flare Bear Gun Revolvers. Now this is covering a bunch of subjects at once, so I'm just going to read them off really quickly. Legal caliber flare guns that are metal and whether they can be used as weapons or not, partially covered. Exposed hammer versus double action, how you determine one or the other, and why you can be fooled. This will come up in a second on me being an idiot, or not, depending on how you look at it. Flare gun safety history. Just that. The ugly standards wars for metal flare guns, and making to where they were incompatible with each other on safety equipment, which is stupid. Plastic version 1 versus 2 of the standard flare gun we all see in PUBG, versus the failsafe and color codes fit for purpose characteristics, such as making sure that if they do break, because there's a bad cartridge or you were stupid enough to put real cartridge in it, where it would break and whether or not it would injure the person or just make it to where they no longer had an arm on them. Or were no longer armed. I'm not referring to your arm coming off. Now, at the 9-minute mark, I mentioned airsoft and paintball fake 12-gauge shells could either A, loosely fit, meaning they're not the right caliber, into a normal gun, or a normal shell should fit into them. Now, at the time, I wasn't able to find a straight answer, and I just tried to do it again. But at the time, I shouldn't have made an assertion about it. I made a stupid assertion. 12-gauge guns, whether they can fit into, has been demonstrated. People were taking flare guns and sticking in the CO2 cartridge ones into them, meaning they were hitting it with a full forced firing pin, and they did it in such a way that it would hit the valve on the back of one of the brands, because one of them has an inset valve so you can hit it and it'll only tap it without breaking it. The other one has a full surface one where you could hit it and possibly break it unless you remove the spring in the flare gun, which is easy because it seems to want to jump out, and make it to where it'll actually fire an airsoft cartridge or paintball cartridge. This is important. And I was discussing people doing that, just taking a flare gun and sticking airsoft stuff in it because it was cheaper to get a flare gun for them, and they just made it fit. They didn't describe the diameters being different, so I might have made an assumption at the time that they were 12-gauge size. They'll fit into a 12-gauge, but a 12-gauge shell shouldn't be able to fit into an airsoft or paintball gun, obviously, even if it uses a 12-gauge shell-shaped cartridge that has most of the characteristics, but not all of them. They don't like the momentary impact of a real firing pin in an unaltered gun, but again, I didn't make it clear in the video that these were people taking 12-gauge flare guns, which are plastic guns with a few metal parts in it, and modifying them to where they didn't hit as hard, or using the one that has a deliberately indented area that you could hit, and it would probably have the right timing for it because it's at the end of its swing, and it's made to be dry fireable, so it could hit and it just barely tap it. Also, some of the cartridges were being discussed as being altered so that any kind of impact would make them fall open, rather than the impact and speed determining how long the valve was open. Many of them are made to where it would just, when you pull the trigger, all it does is just push on the back of the valve to set it off. Some of them have a snap function where they snap open, a hysteresis trigger. Next, I mentioned that if you can't see a hammer on a gun, it almost always means that it's a double action, meaning you pull the trigger and it pulls, let's say it's a toy gun, it would pull against something until it went past a certain point. Let's say you had your firing pin here on the hammer and you're bending a compliant plastic mechanism, and it would slip past and fire suddenly. Now I think from what I'm seeing or hearing when I said it, I was assuming it was using that type of thing, but obviously there are other versions where it just pushes on the button. And again, I was looking at other places on the net discussing this. And I might have indicated in the comment section for the video, it doesn't matter, it's not part of the video, it's not in the description, and I'm not critiquing my video that way. I might have included in the comment section below the video that some people had modified their flare guns to do this thing with a spring, or just using the deeper pocket version from, what is the company? APS Cam 870 shotgun shells have a deeper pocket, so you wouldn't have to worry about them getting hurt by being hit by a shotgun firing pin, because only really the flare gun has a long enough firing pin to actually set it off. It's a really, really long firing pin on flare guns, and it's just begging to be modified, including weakening the spring so it would work on the other one. But anyway, it's not a double action trigger in the Goblin Deuce or the Goblin Solo one barrel. It's literally just a push on it. But I'd also seen other videos of the day. I couldn't find them, and I didn't talk about them in the video. I might have mentioned them in the comment section, but that's not relevant to the video. Where people had put in a compliant mechanism where the hammer would be triggered by a part in it, so it would act like a real firing pin. And I said stupidly in the video that these were, or maybe jokingly, I can't really tell anymore, that these are full-on plastic versions of real 12-gauge pistols, but they're all plastic. And I was pointing out that this falls under the signaling device or toy device where it can't really hurt anybody and it would never really be able to chamber anything. I must have muddled it or whatever, or gotten stupid, and that's cool. And I did a retraction about the Leonid Cobra 6-shot. It did not use a universal frame, it used a specialized one, so it could get away with using an altered 12-gauge metal barrel. It really is, and yes, you could repin it and it would suddenly be a 12-gauge pistol, and this is probably the reason I can't find the thing, because people converted them into 12-gauge full-on pistols because it was too easy. A couple of rivets and a couple of changes later you could do it. At least it was considered easy by the ATF. It's actually decent quality steel, so I don't think it's really easy, but that's probably why you can't find one. I'm trying to find one because I'd like to actually have one, just because it's a fun toy. I would use it for nothing other than, you know, putting blanks in. I want to have a blank firing gun that fires more than one shot. Then I brought fireworks toy flare guns existing and signal loopholes for bear guns existed. And then I said that the interstate and internet, I didn't say it out loud but correctly, but I alluded to the fact that interstate and international export and import laws in various states like California and in New York were odd at the time of my vid being uploaded and concerned themselves with airsoft, paintball, and other guns and unnecessarily regulated things because two reasons. One, to create a monopoly environment. Number two, because legitimately people were buying simulated firearms that look too real. And it's not illegal for you to pull the orange tip off in most areas. And people would move into the area and have one with no orange tip on it. And the state law requires you to leave it on. It's only needed legally for you to import or sell it at a counter in some states. You can do anything you want to. Somebody can spray paint it. Now, someone says, the thing with those airsoft ones is that they don't actually work with normal firing systems. They use what's called a push trigger. Yes, I know about that now. At the time, I didn't mention it. I was still researching it. This was just an aside thing. I was talking about the fact that they are simulated arms mostly and look way too much like a real gun, and they have things like not having the right chambering, that sort of thing. If you had a normal trigger where the pin strikes it, you'd break your shells. Now that I have to contend isn't accurate because I was talking about specifically the flare gun alteration where I didn't mention it, but they altered the spring. They use rubber bands instead, but okay. If you clicked on the Reddit post and actually read it instead of just taking the title at surface level, you would know that the trigger on these was modified. It just said that. I don't remember having a Reddit posting listed in the video. It may be in the comment section, but we're talking about the video content because nobody really looks through the comment section, but okay. There's no spring and the firing pin had to be extended. Okay. I was talking about the plastic compliant one, but I didn't mention that, so okay, cool. If you put a shotgun shell in it, it's just going to softly push the primer. It's not supposed to be able to chamber it, so I think we have the chambering diameters wrong. Again, finding out what standards these companies use for making special purpose proprietary things like fake shotgun shells to fire 6mm BBs versus shooting, what do they call it, a 67.2 caliber paintball when it's supposed to be 68.5 or something. Yeah, by the way, this is the Goblin Deuce paintball gun. I'm not talking about the airsoft. It has an airsoft function, though. You can put one of the shells in. They were trying to be proprietary so you couldn't trade parts back and forth. There was only 2 companies at the time. Now I don't even know how many there are. Even if you make it metal and those flare guns are bored out in a way so too short to use any commercial shells. I know, but what happened is that people were putting in airsoft shells, specifically paintball shells, that did fit. They were basically just 12-gauge shells, slightly skinnier, that would let you get away with using the air canister to shoot one paintball. And I was talking about making one that didn't do that. Specifically, I'm thinking of propane-driven ones, but that's not relevant to the conversation here. You're wrong about the ban of paintball and pellet airsoft guns in California. No, I was talking about export and import restrictions. I didn't make that clear, and I'm sorry. I was mirroring the fact that they had done hard restrictions in New York because it's a major port, and California was doing it for their ports because it's a large set of ports. We have one of the biggest airsoft distributors and some of the best, most famous paintball parks. Okay. I even ordered stuff straight from Asia for airsoft. Yes, and I didn't mention it, but whatever state you're in may make note of you buying stuff like that and having it recorded later for future prosecution. That's why, and he says, I don't get your point about this video, but it sure sounds like you think flare guns and airsoft guns are a loophole to get dangerous illegal shotguns out there. No, I was saying that if you use them as a pattern, you could use them as a pattern to make something like that, and it wouldn't be legal, and that they're also a way of getting, the reason they're legal is they're a toy, or they don't chamber something correctly, like you're talking about, or in the case of flare guns, it's a signaling device, not a weapon, because its explicit purpose is to make noise or visual data happen. In the case of a bear banger, it does make noise. They're not. If you look into it anymore, you would know that's not possible. Okay. As for the not possible part, I was alluding to the fact that you could use the paintball rounds in a shotgun shell that's had everything out of it and fire the paintball rounds, specifically first strike rounds, out of it just using the primer. Next person criticizing me. I'll pretend you entirely discredited the person we're talking about, and it's a person calling himself Mike Yeadon. He claims, or has been claimed to have been, a Pfizer CSO when he was never. Not the CSO or CEO. Do you have any knowledge or counter-arguments to his assertions about human immunology? Yes, and so does every other medical expert and scientist I could find, and they explain very clearly why he is simply wrong. I'm not doing my own original research. People coming to me telling me I'm wrong about some expert's opinion, ignore the fact that I'm quoting every other expert on the planet saying they're wrong. What was his assertion? Okay. He told a talk radio show he doesn't believe there's a second wave when it has happened, and has challenged the government to prove otherwise. But they have, and it did happen, and we're now in third wave approximately. He was splitting hairs about shit so he could get on a talk radio show and appeal to contrarianism. Meanwhile, normal medical people don't do that because they're trying to keep people from dying. And his actions endangered people because it told them to not trust medical advice that may be medically damned important. And on one hand, you have real medical people who admit when they're wrong, and then you have the sheeple leaders out there who call themselves truthers, who never admit when they're wrong, and you can easily prove it. Like him, he was wrong. It's all there is. He was just wrong. And it isn't just hindsight now. It was at the time I uploaded the video about, what was his name? Mike Yeadon. He was also involved in a company that produced a product to treat some medical problem, like eczema or whatever, and the product ended up causing some of the same symptoms as it was supposed to be treating. And this caused a financial damage to the company that bought his company out. He was never the CEO of Pfizer or CSO. He was a CSO at a company they bought. He has touted his expertise as a doctor and went into contrarian mode all the time when he is simply proven wrong about something. And he has a chip on his shoulder because one of the products he was responsible for ended up causing a company to lose $600 million or more. And some of you keep coming here beguiled by the guy saying what you want to hear and claiming to be a CEO, or having other people claim he was the CEO of Pfizer when he fucking wasn't. And any question of what did he actually study and do work on, you don't get straight answers out of him necessarily, at least on camera or on audio recording. Definitely not on the radio thing. He is conversant in the subject. I don't try to make myself sound like I'm conversant in the subject. I tell you to go look up shit. The links below in the video could have explained this for you. No one agrees with him except for a couple of other contrarians who are trying to sell you snake oil, literally in some cases. Just ban his videos. They're too dangerous for people to see. Dangerous because he's wrong and can hurt somebody? Or because of that, he's dangerous because he's a truther. And at that point I say, fuck you. What about Darwin? And then this is going to be somebody bringing up a lie about Darwin? I don't even know where you're going with that. May I not decide for myself what is dangerous? No, you may not, because you're the kind of person who goes out and coughs on people as a political statement. You're a rat licker. Go fuck yourself. Oops, I forgot. Waptec is smarter. No, I'm just not as dumb as you. I'm not exceptional. I'm just not a turd. Good day, good luck, goodbye.